BBC Home Service. Here is the 8 o'clock news. Sir John Ingram, speaking of the economic crisis at Worcester last night, warned the people of Britain to face further cuts in the near future. He stressed the importance of a rigid economy and appealed to everyone to accept the present austerity with fortitude and optimism.
This financial crisis is very serious. These are tough times for the world and tough times for Britain. And at such times, what this country needs is a leader with a track record in international economics. It doesn't matter what track or what record. This is no time for novices, because this crisis is bad news for all the people of this country. Except me. Jeez, I needed this. I was going down faster than a ferret in a bobsled. At last, something where putting my serious face on and looking miserable is what people want to see. Get in.
So the party's over. It was Warren Buffett, the 78-year-old multi-billionaire investor, who said, "When the tide goes out, you learn who's swimming naked." Even now, the beaches of Monaco, Jersey, Grand Cayman and the Hamptons are awash with butt-naked bankers scrabbling for the shore. No surprise, then, that last month the Governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, signalled the start of the long walk back to boredom. A twist on Mandela's long walk to freedom.
Oh, I spent 30 years in jail before they let me run anything. These guys should do it the other way around.
Around the world, the recriminations have begun. Hello. Tonight, our news night, I'm joined by some of the finest brains in the city, and we thought it would be good to quiz them on exactly what's gone wrong. Then we thought, sod it, let's put them in a sack and drown them instead. In America, the bankers have been made to face congressional committees.
Your company is now bankrupt, our economy is in a state of crisis, but you get to keep $480 million. Is this fair?
Over here, the closest we get is a few people who couldn't run away fast enough being questioned by Jeremy Paxman. Yes. Are you now, or have you ever been, a banker? In the States, CEOs are being summoned before hearings like the anti-communist tribunals of the 1950s, which is ironic because this time it's not communism, but capitalism that's the threat.
Well, you see, I don't think you should ever forget what capitalism did for the Soviet Union. Damn near finished them off. Did for them what the American invasion did for Iraq. It'll take them years to recover.
In the West, the free market has taken the biggest blow to its credibility for 80 years. Robert. Hugh, in London and on Wall Street, governments relaxed controls and gave the banks free licence. The result was what Alan Greenspan called irrational exuberance. We might as well have given them Class A drugs, which would have had the same effect and provided a welcome boost to Colombia's economy. It was a time of weak regulation. In 1999, Britain's Financial Services Authority announced, "We're committed to maintaining a light regulatory touch for business. Professionals do not need or want the protections provided for private customers. They're in the best position to determine the terms on which they should do business with each other." That's the FSA. The one thing this has all proved is that an economy without regulation is like Prince Philip without a press officer. You just know, sooner or later, if he's left unattended, he'll disgrace himself and embarrass the nation. The result was the crunch.
Only the crumbliest, flakiest, half-baked ingredients go into new jumbo-sized crunch. Thick, nutty loans and mouth-watering bonuses make this crunch bigger than ever before. Crunch, a free trade product, now with government bailouts.
We can always call it a bush. Yeah. Thanks for the legacy, guys. Then in 50 years' time, we could talk about the bush in the same way we talk about the Depression. I lost my house in the bush. I got hit by the bush and I'm living on the street. We must never allow another bush to happen. Whereas in Britain, we can just talk about being in the brown stuff.
A Mendelssohn, a toxic instrument that has inflated its own value. An Osborne, a position that rapidly loses credit. A piston, a share that has complete dominance over a certain market.
Look, you should never forget that markets are the freest expression of Western democracies. You know, they're the best mechanism ever devised to put resources to their most efficient and productive use, free from government interference. Well, until they malfunction and bring the world to its knees, at which point it's the role of government to say, never mind, have £500 million.
I think this crisis has shown that people were wrong to say that governments are at the mercy of the markets, that somehow we don't have a role. I think it's clear now we do have a role, and that role is to bail out the banks when they make a catastrophic error. As Alistair Darling said, only governments can do this because they can refresh the parts others cannot reach. Or was that Heineken? Anyway, we do the same. And it's reassuringly expensive. No, hang on, that was Stella. Anyway, it's all about liquidity.
So the governments bail out the bankers, but then they always do. Gordon Brown's idea of recapitalising the banks didn't exactly come from the Communist Manifesto.
This isn't really the time to be taking stock. This is the time to be buying stock in the banks, so they have the confidence to do whatever it is they were doing, but not make quite so much money out of it.
Let's face it, you have to hand it to the banks. Well, we are handing it to the banks. But in return, what do we get?
Are you hooked on bailouts? Desperate for that next fix of government cash? Addicted to irresponsible finance? Are you a banker? Don't worry, it's okay. It happens to thousands of ordinary people all around the world. There's no shame in admitting it. All right, there might be some shame in admitting it, but it's not like you've killed anyone, directly. So why not contact us and talk to other people just like you who also fell into the world of banking and struggled to get out? You owe that much to your loved ones, and your customers, and the taxpayer. Contact Bankers Anonymous, and we will guarantee to keep the size of your payout a secret.
You know what's strange about the last couple of months? It's how we've seen Americans come together and unite over one thing. They all hate the bankers. You know, when you get the anti-capitalists with their slogans and their placards and their scruffy clothes agreeing with the super-capitalists who'd rather die than bail out the bankers, you kind of feel, you know, this is a nation at one.
Well, I mean, it's extraordinary. You've got the people who can't stand capitalism and the people who can't stand socialism, and they're both on exactly the same page. It's like seeing Swampy and John Redwood up a tree together.
But for the moment, at least, the banks are on the back foot. In the 90s, they were in such a position of power that banker David Rockefeller told fellow delegates at the Bilderberg conference that the supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national self-determination practiced in past centuries. Nowadays, you're less likely to find the words intellectual elite and world bankers in the same sentence.
Although you might find them on the same yacht. Very, very important. Very important we don't alienate the real wealth creators. Yes, we need ordinary, honest men of the soil. Nothing wrong with that. Ordinary people doing what ordinary people do. Making things, soft cushions, lettuces, I don't know. What do people do in factories all day? Anyway, ride around on bicycles in cloth caps, calling each other chummy, waiting for the tea trolley to come around. Nothing wrong with that. The great unwashed beavering away, home to a tin bath in front of the fire and a plate of hot ciabatta and dripping. Perfectly reasonable, perfectly fair, perfectly ghastly. But don't let me influence you. No. What we need, every bit as much, only more so, are very, very rich people holding shadowy meetings on Mediterranean yachts, oiling the wheels of the world economy. Little drip here, tiny drop there. You scratch my back, I'll tip off the editor of a national newspaper. Always has been and always will be, and it's my job... Hang on, I have still got one, haven't I? Yes, it's my job, the one Gordon specifically asked me to do, to get stuck in and make sure the papers have a good, old-fashioned story about rich folk on the razzle. To send the message that things are back to normal, to how they've always been, how they always will be. Plus ça change.